So, as some doctrines, they are created by one word, basically. You change the word and the whole doctrine changes, major doctrines. And this is one of them. This is one of them that, I believe the Father showed me a long time ago, a few years ago, that what this actually means and what the purpose of creation is for. Um, and there's more teachings from the common, I like to say the common doctrine from the church world, that sort of simplifies and does away with the true meaning by just saying Trinity and whatever. And then this is one of those too. This is one of those doctrines, unfortunately, where they read and it says, oh, all things were created by him, and that's it. They don't get the meaning, they don't see it. It's a lot more in depth, and it's not what they're saying. Is that what it's actually teaching? That the Messiah created the creation and spoke it into existence? Is that what it's teaching, really? Well, on this, I don't know if a lot of people still respect the King James translation, and I do too, but I'm not one of those that says every single word is translated but see, the problem is this might not even be biased, because 500 years ago this would have meant something a little different than what people think now when they see the word by. And there's other verses that use that word, and you could just replace it with through. And that's really what it should mean, because they get it from Colossians 1:16. For by him were all things created, that are in heaven and that are in earth, visible and invisible, whether they be thrones or dominions or principalities or powers. All things were created by him and for him. 2 times in that verse, by him and for him. And he is before all things, and by him all things consist. You should be able to understand what that means, even with that word in there, but the most of the church world doesn't. So they will say it's a perversion to look anywhere else. It means by, and by is what it means. No, if you look up the word, it actually doesn't. It means because, or for, or because, or through. I'm gonna pull up 3 literal translations, one of the 3 most literal that I know of, and they all say the same thing. Concordant literal, probably the most literal word for word, consistent, concordant kind of translation that exists, except it's based on that newer manuscript stuff, which I disagree and I wish it wasn't, but not every word is different everywhere. So here it reads, for in him is all created, that in the heavens and that on the earth, the visible and the invisible, whether thrones or lordships or sovereignties or authorities. All is created through him and for him, and he is before all, and all has its cohesion in him. And he is the head of the body, the ecclesia, who is sovereign, firstborn from among the dead, that in all he may be becoming first. For in him the entire complement delights to dwell. That's one of them. The Young's literal, because in him were the all things created, those in the heavens and those upon the earth, those visible and those invisible, whether thrones, whether lordships, whether principalities, whether authorities. All things through him and for him have been created, and himself is before all, and the all things, the word things there I'm pretty sure is added. It should just be the all, and the all in him have consisted. and himself is the head of the body, the assembly, who is a beginning, a firstborn out of the dead, that he might become in all himself first, because in him it did please all the fullness to tabernacle, and through him to reconcile the all to himself. Through him, in him, through him, in him, through him, consistent. And the Rotherham reads the same. These are both 3 literal translations, because in him were created all things in the heavens and upon the earth. Kind of a big difference. In him and through him instead of, and that's what by actually means. You know, that's what it actually means, by him. It means in him and through him. And they all through him and for him and have been created. He is before all, and they all in him hold together. He might become in all things himself preeminent, because in him, through him, and through him fully to reconcile all unto him, making peace through the blood of the cross, of his cross through him. You know, it's consistent. So what I'm saying is that word by, by, in the King James Version, from what I can see, and I've done that study a long time ago, it's not a perversion to say in him and through him. That's what by means there. It's not talking about literally by him. So people picture the Messiah before creation, and he created all things. It was created by him. That changes the meaning quite a bit, massively, because the Father, the plan before creation was to create all things in him and go through him. And that's what it teaches. You can't get to the Father unless you go through him and in him. And that's what creation was created specifically for. You know, one of these major teachings is that you go in him and through him to get to the Father. There's no other gate. There's no other way. It was created for him, in him, through him. He's the King of Kings. There's no other name that's higher except the Father himself. He gave him a higher name than all names. And I read somewhere else that not even the angels are called sons. You know, to what angel did he call a son? You know, so being called a son is actually, according to the teaching, something greater than the names given to angels. And I'm not going to claim to understand all that. You know, I suppose in due time it'll all make more sense. But in Job, it says it's not just talking about him, the prophecy. Somewhere in Job, it says that what is it about man, you know, all man, really, if you read the context, that you created man lower, a little lower than the angels. So they don't get that teaching right either. It's prophecy about him, but it's also about those becoming sons of God, Elohim, sons of the Father. You know, it's not just him, it's those also becoming sons. So they also, you know, and I don't know that my understanding is those that are becoming the first fruits are also going to have a name greater than the angels. But maybe some would say I'm speaking blasphemy, but I don't think so. I see that Paul quotes from Job quite a bit, and he quotes that verse about what is it about man, and it's definitely referencing to the Messiah, but I see it as also mankind going through Messiah, not just one, you know, not just one. That's not the purpose. But all creation was created with the idea in mind that it needs to go through him and in him. That's my understanding of by, and it's pretty different, you know, from what I got taught in the church world, that they just simply, it was created by him. That's it. Oh, that's kind of it. And maybe they add a little more to that, but it sort of takes the meaning away um, when you just say that and then it's over, or like when you get it to what they would call a Trinitarian teaching or verse, they just say Trinity instead of actually teaching the full meaning of what the purpose is, what's going on here. What is the true teaching? It's not just Trinity. As I don't believe in a Trinity and I haven't been corrected on it, and I don't think I will be, because I don't actually see that in Scripture, that the Father is the standard teaching of three persons, all separate, all co-eternal, coexistent, words that are missing. They just make those up. It's not in there. And they use maybe Colossians in another place or two to say that he is the Father, I guess, God. I'll never, that Trinity teaching will never make any sense because it's not true. It's not logical. It's not orderly. It doesn't tell you the purpose of creation. There's one Father, there's one Creator, and that's the Father. And then he gave all things to a man. That's the real teaching, The Spirit was upon him from birth, and he suffered and learned through suffering, and he overcame sin perfectly. And they sort of strip that teaching, that meaning. They sort of just throw it all away by teaching the Trinity, about what he actually did through the man, and then you're supposed to become like him. So that's as I'm familiar with what they say and teach, we're considered blasphemers, and I'm very careful hopefully not teaching any blasphemies and false major doctrines like that. But we deny his divinity. I'm not denying anything. This is just what scriptures teach. It's what his word, it's his word, the Father's word. It's nobody else's word. And the easiest place to get that foundation is in Deuteronomy, I think. It's not Messiah speaking. It's silly. They say that he was the God of the Old Testament, Then who on earth was it that said, I will put my words in his mouth to speak, and you will hear him, in the future generations. You will hear him. You will listen to him. Obviously, the Israelites at that time when that was spoken, it wasn't directly for them. This was, sure, they pointed forward and looked forward. But that prophecy was, you will hear him, for those who, I don't like using the word lucky, but they just happened to be in that generation that they started to understand things that the prophets couldn't see fully, And that's what it says. You're hearing and seeing things that they wish they could. So then what's the true teaching then? Well, he's a man. Anything else would be blasphemy then, because then you deny what the Father did through him, through the Spirit, By saying he overcame sin because he was fully divine, And what they mean by that, or half divine, is that he was God himself, fully. The eternal one that died. And then you end up with all kinds of contradictions. You end up with all kinds of problems that they ignore and don't care about, really. You bring them up and I don't know what they do with them, but they ignore them. Apparently everyone already has immortality, so The scriptures talking about immortality doesn't even make any sense if you're already immortal. The soul that sins dies. No, it doesn't. It's immortal. It never dies. It's the undying soul. And it's a web of all of these doctrines connected to it fall apart when you acknowledge that he's a man. Maybe that's why he said son of man. Look in the scriptures how many times he said that. Count them. There's a reason, because he's literally son of man. Son of God, son of Elohim, is spiritual, and they just can't get it. If you're a believer and you're a son of the Father, it's not because of some physical act, physical seed. It's spiritual, you know. And so he would be the first example of everyone else being that. Why would he be a son in some kind of physical sense, literal, and then all those after him are something completely different? They're not related to the Father physically. You know, you could see the problem. If he's the firstborn of the new creation, it's not talking about literally being the firstborn, like the teaching is that he was born before Adam. No, he wasn't. That's pretty evident that even in Genesis, it says Genesis about a seed that will crush, you know, that was coming. How obvious is that? He wasn't born before Adam, but he's the firstborn of the new creation. That's what it's talking about. Becoming in the Father's image is the new creation. So Adam wasn't truly in the image that he was in his image, and we're created in his image, in that's the goal, and that's what's going to happen. But how could somebody that sinned all their life be in his image perfectly, you know? And that's including all the believers today. We've all sinned. So how, you know, isn't that blaspheming what his image really means, which is perfection? We're becoming. It's a process. And I had way too much. Today was a failure. Caffeine, and it messed me up, you know, and I need to stop that. But I'm usually not that bad at it. But today it's like really affecting me, man. I'm all shaky, and it's actually not a good, pleasant thing, you know. But I still got some weaknesses that need to be overcome, you know. And I don't think it's a sin to have like a cup of coffee or something, but today it just hit me, you know, too much. It's not good to be addicted to anything either, so don't be addicted. I don't know if that's coming across through the video, but it's, you know, I thought about ending it right away because it just, I'm not feeling like normal. I'm all shaky and stuff. But, you know, it's a very rare teaching, so it's hard for a lot of people to believe it, but that's what he's shown me. And it hasn't been changed. He hasn't rebuked me for it in years. That, you know, I really believe he was what the scriptures say. I have the scriptures to back me up on that day. You know, all the verses that said he's a son of David, from the bowels, from the loins, from the flesh, according to the flesh, from the seed of David. You know, if that has any value or meaning, then it means he was literally from the line. And Matthew doesn't give you a big genealogy just to assume something different. Like, you have to assume every single time it says that. You have to say, well, okay, but you gotta explain what Matthew is saying. He's not really a son of David. He's only a legal son, or a legal, you know, legal parents, legal everything. I don't know how they do it. It blows my mind. How many scriptures do you have to deny to keep your Trinity doctrine? You know, you take away all the power, all the glory of what the Father did. And just to get your little doctrine, Trinity, which I maintain is a golden calf spiritually. It's not good. He's from the tribe of Judah. There's, from the line. And everybody comes from a line. Your grandpa, mine, everybody's. You could say you're the seed of such and such, put in a name, or great grandpa, That's what Matthew's genealogy is you're the son of, son of, son of. But all of a sudden, when Messiah comes, you have to assume it's different than all the other genealogies that say son of. Like David is son of Abraham, right? And we all know what that means. He literally came from that line. There's a connection. But now Messiah being a son of David, there's zero connection. Something's wrong with that. That breaks the scriptures. It's because it's not true. There's a misunderstanding somewhere else that they're not getting. There's too many clear scriptures, like the theologians say. First figure out the easier ones, then go to the harder ones. But they don't do that themselves. When it says Messiah's parents, why should I assume that they're not his parents, that they're some kind of legal parents? Why would I do that? When it says brothers and sisters, why would I assume that they're fake brothers and sisters? They're just legally or technically because of adoption or something, which would make him a bastard. They don't even know what they're saying. In order for him to be part of the Hebrew, part of the kingdom, you'd have to be from Abraham. If you're not from Abraham, you're a Gentile. That was the old understanding of Gentile, not from Abraham. So what was he then? If he wasn't from that line, then he was a Gentile. And we know that's not true. And he even says in Revelation, I was dead, I died, and now I live. And I'm from the offspring of David, and that's this lion right here, the tribe of Judah. So you throw it all away basically, and you preach another Messiah. And that's why they have that's part of the problem in the church world is that's why they're so divided. Because the same Messiah must not be leading them. They got something else going on. And 1 John 4 calls that spirit of Antichrist or anti-Messiah, if you want to replace the word Christ with Messiah every time. And he gives you the definition. It's those who deny he came in the flesh. Now, something the Father gave me that I don't see too many people using to prove what that means is that there were many of those. Whatever that is, whatever you think it is, there's many. Go read it. There's now many Antichrist. There's already many in this world. So from that point on, there was always going to be many. How many more many now? Or how many more now, So there's many of those who deny he came in the flesh. Now, what does it mean? If it just means he was a flesh and blood man on earth, then see how you make the Father a liar? Where are all those many? Who are they? Even the Catholics say he was a flesh and blood man. Everyone does. I don't know of a single person that says he was spirit floating around. So it makes the word to no effect. It just makes him a liar. Where's the many? This is how you prove it. You can't answer that question, Trinitarians. You can't show me who the many are that deny he came in the flesh. You say that there's none. According to your understanding of that, there's none. Zero. All denominations, the whole world believes he was a man, flesh and blood. That's their understanding of coming in the flesh. I'm saying it's wrong. What that means is he came through the natural way. That's what it means. Now you can see many. Now you can see many who reject that and say he came from divinity somewhere else. That was the original part of the original Gnostic teaching, I believe, that has been twisted. There were Gnostics back then, and John really goes into that, and Antichrist is mentioned more than once, and it has to do with denying he came in the flesh. So John thinks it's a big deal, and I'm going to say, he's right, not with some, he's inspired. He was inspired, and I consider them scriptures. So if he says that denying him is well, that's a serious problem then. If you say he came from divinity, because that's anti-Messiah. That's something else. That's what the whole world is believing, and they're going to be against those who believe that. They're going to be spiritual enemies, because Antichrist is not, they are by definition against true believers. They're anti. And it just happens to be, that's what it is. That's what it's going to be. And whatever this last days deception grows into, it's going to have something to do with that, the denial of the true Messiah for one that came from somewhere else that scriptures don't speak of, And they simply don't understand some of the spiritual words of I am the bread from heaven, That physical bread came from heaven to the Israelites, but that bread represents spiritual food. So the spiritual teaching, it's a spiritual teaching. Since we're not talking about physical bread now, we're not talking about falling from heaven physically, are we? But the Spirit of the Father came down from heaven, if you will, and that matches the scriptures, kind of falling like a dove. And it dwelled in him, and the Spirit's supposed to dwell in you the same way, And obviously, what I add to that is not to the same degree, because if it did from birth, then we would also be sinless too. But he could do that. He could do that if he wanted to, but it's not the way it is for us. That was special for one person, one man. And I think that's why it says only begotten, because it doesn't mean only son. And you can prove that with the scriptures. Only begotten does not mean the only one, like the NIV would translate it. That begotten should be kept. That word should be kept there, because it means born, and there's really no other word for it. You could say begat, begotten. It all means born. In the English, there's no other way to really. So you should keep that word, that phrase, because it's more, it's accurate. Because what is it? What's the example? Abraham, Isaac. Somebody's, he mentions your begotten, only begotten son, your only begotten, but he already had one son physically, But that son, I think it's Isaac, he had Ishmael, I think, first. But see, he called Isaac the only begotten because he was special, set apart. So it doesn't mean only one. That's not he was ready to sacrifice his only begotten son, his only. And he already had Ishmael. So it doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean only one, literally. It means special for a special purpose. So that was a type of Messiah being sacrificed as the only begotten, one of a kind, special. And I think that's what that means. It doesn't have anything, because if it was the only, literally only son, then there would be no other sons in the future, which contradicts scripture, doesn't it? Those who walk in the Spirit, these are the sons of the Father. So who are they then? I think there's a lot more that could be said about, about this opens up the true meaning what actually happened. And it can get confusing because they make it sound like they make it sound like the Gnostics were the ones who denied his divinity and stuff, and they're the enemy. They mix it, it just gets all mixed up. Um, when indeed it's them, the way I see it, who should be talking about themselves. Those were the original Gnostics. If you put in Trinitarians back into the first century, John would be talking about them, not us. He'd be talking about them rejecting the Messiah who came through a specific line, exactly like the Father wanted. And that's why there's so much genealogy in not just Matthew, but in other scriptures. Genesis, Chronicles, like one of them books are like mostly genealogies. He came through a very specific line, and then all of a sudden it's cut off at the end. That whole entire line in all of scriptures literally cut off. If you say he came from the seed of the Father physically, which is the teaching, and he said the flesh profits nothing. My words are spirit. They're not seeing the spiritual truth. You must be born again is not a physical truth, and they're trying to force it and stuff it in there as it is. And he mocked that teacher. You know, what are you, a teacher or something? Great teacher of Israel? Don't you know you must be born again, begotten anew from above? Some translations have from above. I think the Greek kind of has that sense, born again from above. So it's either way, it's not wrong. The ones that say from above or just born again. And that has nothing to do with physical. That's all. That's that simple. It's true. It's got to happen. But he wasn't understanding how it happens. He literally thought, you're born twice physically through your mother again or something. And he's asking him, what are you, a teacher? If you can't even understand earthly things, if you can't understand physical earthly things, how on earth are you going to understand what it means to be born again? Heavenly things, spiritual. And so most of the doctrine today is an understanding of what the Pharisees had, who he called devils, with no understanding practically. They look at the Pharisees' response, and they use the Pharisees' response because they thought he was a prideful man, calling himself God because he called him son of God, called himself son of the Father. And he let him have it basically, but he gave him an example, in aren't you called Elohims, gods? That's what it's translated as in the scriptures, of which you can find. People, humans, are called Elohims, which would be translated God or gods in the New Testament, Theos, I guess. It's unfortunate. You have to know where that word is coming from. It's Elohim in the scriptures. So he's saying if they're called gods, why do you have a problem with me calling myself son of God? If people, your scriptures that you say you believe in, people were called Elohims, and now you have a problem with me called son of. I'm not even saying I'm God, but you have a problem with, I'm son of Elohim. You could see it. I think you could see it for those that understand this. The Pharisees thought he was calling himself, and they thought that was blasphemy. They were wrong. That's my whole point. That's where I'm getting at. They were wrong. They didn't understand, and they take that understanding today in the churches, most of them, and they use the Pharisees' understanding and put a stamp of approval on it. That he was saying he was God because of what the Pharisees thought. Big X, big X on that. They didn't understand, and there's other examples that they took literally and did not understand his word. He tripped them up. And it was meant to be like that, you know. He was the stumbling stone to his own people, that rock of offense. How much more scripture do you need to prove that he was a stumbling stone? They didn't understand it. They couldn't see it. They just hated him, that's all. They just wanted to destroy him and catch him in some kind of sin. You know, he broke the Sabbath because the disciples plucked some grain because they were hungry and they didn't have the proper understanding of what the Sabbath day is. They added like the equivalent of it flipping a light switch today would be a sin. You know, that's what they did to the Sabbath day. It was lawful to do good. If you had to do good and do something right, then it's lawful to do good, heal somebody. And he showed them their hypocrisy, and I don't think they fully, or if they did see something, they just got angry and they were blinded. They just wanted to kill him, you know. Oh, he got us again. Let's kill him. And then he runs away again and again. Because it wasn't his time, that's why. Because the Father had him die right down to the minute, the right timing. Everything was perfect. According to the pattern 1,500 years earlier, on a certain day, on a certain hour, everything, you know, it was going to be perfect, which is, you know, how did he pull that off? Think about it. How did the Father pull that off? Perfect timing, everything. If he wasn't sovereign, that's all. That's what I'm saying. If he wasn't sovereign, how did he do that? How did he use evil to get the plan done exactly when he wanted to? If they could have changed it, twisted it with their absolutely free cause, free will, how come they didn't do it? The people to do it best would have been the Pharisees. How come they couldn't do it? They couldn't pull it off. No, instead they were the unbelievers. The evil was used for good, to do good, just like maybe some people have a problem that like unbelievers, for example, well, they do some research and they find out Bibles came through the Catholic Church system, and they figure out that church system was pretty evil, you know, throughout the ages, because he did it. He preserved the scriptures through the enemy. He preserved the scriptures through the Pharisee equivalent. You could say the Old Testament, and then they were the equivalent of the Old Testament enemies. They just became the new renewed covenant Pharisees, basically. And somehow they did it, and it's somehow he did it. And it's interesting how he does that. I think he works through evil more often than good to do something, you know. Maybe it's to prove a point. Like, what are you going to do? Stop me? You know, I'm the creator. If I want to do something good through the evil and preserve it, why not? Why can't I? And that's the final conclusion. It had to be like that. Because if it wasn't for the Constantine and the Catholic power and Roman Catholic Church, you know, I suppose we wouldn't, or he could have done it some other way, but it wasn't preserved by his people, the ones that actually really care. No, the enemy actually cemented it and preserved it, and they got deceived. That's how, too. He deceived them because of their, you know, they were already deceived, and then he hardens them and deceives them further. They literally thought that, I guess, till the end of the age, or ages, that they would have kept that power. The Bibles would be in Latin forever, and we would only be able to read them. And it was the custom that the people who went in there, they didn't get to read or how, you know, they got taught by the priests and all the holy people, so-called. And they did that for such a long time, I have a hard time believing it, man. That's how bad it was that whole time. And then if you look into the history, you could see how angry they were when the first English translation and other stuff started happening. Somehow somebody, the people within he used the people within the system to sort of come out, and maybe they were considered righteous, for the time, and they wouldn't have had all the understandings we have. I don't know how that's all going to work out, but some of these people, they were martyred, for doing what they did. So that must be that was for the ultimate good. They came out of her and did this in the dark, because otherwise they would have caught you, translating in hiding, doing this, because it was against the law. It was abomination against the church, the mother church, to do that, to try to get Bibles in other, anywhere, spread them out to people in 1300s. Wycliffe didn't even finish the translation, I don't think. And then there was a few Bibles that came, there was a few of them that came from that line. He translated from Latin Vulgate to English, and then those were like revisions from that line, and then the King James Version is ultimately a revision of revisions. And then a bunch of them got together and used that translation from the traditional, history preserved, with some manuscripts. And I think they had more than what some of the people are claiming, the critical text people. I think they had more manuscripts than what they were claiming, but they used that to sort of supplement, maybe correct some minor things here and there from the Latin Vulgate. And that's how that was preserved. So that's why the claim in the late 1800s, I don't buy it, that the text is way better now. They fixed it. They're on their 21st revision or whatever it's on now. They call it something else now. Nestle text or whatever. Westcott Hort, then something else, then Nestle text. The claim is for 1800 something years they had perverted, wrong scriptures. Now they're getting closer to the truth, I don't think so. I think that's just that's the mark of the fruit of the evil, the devil, to have trillions of translations and loosey-goosey kind of, how many revisions, I don't know, it's in the teens or 20s. And I don't like, and most of virtually all of the new translations today, for a long time now, 100-something years, they use that new text, critical text, which basically, if you believe in that, then you said for 1800 years that the whatever they had was not, the true preserved scriptures. It took 1800 something years to get closer to the truth, but I see the exact opposite going on. That's just an attack in the last days, in the last few hundred years, and it just gets worse. And now you can see the growth and division and the paraphrases and the mega churches, and now they could translate however they freely want. If they don't like a verse, if it stings them too much, they just change it, just outright. And they create their own Bibles based on their denomination, instead of going towards the literal side. As much as you can, you have to paraphrase a little bit, but what I'm saying is they're just really loose, and it's created division, and a mass amount of division, and which one's the best out of thousands or hundreds makes you question everything, which lines up with, in Genesis. That's what the devil does, just makes you question it, that's all. So I'm not a King James only, that kind of, I think I have the right balance that I see it with overall. That I favor the text highly, but not necessarily King James only translation, It's not that like I can't look at anything else and see how they translated it, but overall, yeah, King James, or I don't have a problem with the New King James, like some of the King James only people have. They say it's evil and perverted, and I don't think it's perverted like many of the modern ones are. I think it's pretty decent. And they use the same text, and you can check it line for line. All the words are there. And the Young's Literal uses it. I call them the big three because there's really not much else. It's amazing that how far away they gone from that traditional text preserved through that whole time period. There's others if you dig. There's going to be a few others maybe, but those are the three that are probably more known that people heard of: King James, New King James, and Young's Literal. The rest of them are pretty much all based on that new text. NU, kind of like NU metal, new metal. There's nothing new about it. There's nothing that great about it, in my opinion. And that's what is it? Is it, if it glorifies to tell the truth by denying some kind of divinity, isn't that the truth then? Isn't that what's glorifying the Father, by telling people the truth? How am I denying the Messiah if the scriptures say that he would be like Moses, because Moses was a type of Messiah? He wasn't the Messiah, but he was a type of a mediator, and Moses wasn't incarnated or half deity. Why on earth would why would the fulfillment be something massively different? They can't answer those questions. And so that's the Messiah I know, fully man, who had fully the Father in him, and that lines up with all the teachings. Can't you see the Father's in me, and I'm in the Father? Spiritual. And they didn't get it until they received the Spirit. It was like Philip or something. It's almost funny, some of their questions. Just show me the Father. Just show us the Father, and that'll be enough. Can you imagine someone saying that today? And that's why he says, haven't I been so long with you? What is this? How come you can't understand? Of course, he knew why they couldn't understand, but for our sake, for their sake. I've been with you so long, 3-something years, at least 3 years, and you still don't get it. Show me the Father. What are you talking about? You're carnal. Show me the Father. What's that going to do? What if you did see the Father somehow physically? What would that do to your life? So you see the Father by seeing his works working in me. That's how you see him. That's the only way you're going to see him now. No one can see the Father and live. You should know that, Philip. Don't you know that if anyone were to see the full glory of the Father, it would just die instantly? So he only manifested that glory however he saw fit in the temple at the time. That wasn't his full glory. I imagine his full glory would just burn up the whole entire earth instantly, and that's what they don't understand. These doctrines are carnal ultimately, and they rely on physical things and physical understanding of what happened. And that devil, man, that's what it does. You could say subconsciously, because I don't know a better way to say it. Subconsciously, it gets people to think they're not supposed to be like Messiah. You're not supposed to be like him. No one can be him, you've heard that said. Don't ever ask, would Messiah do this? No one can be like him, Christians do that. I've said that before, and I've never gotten good answers. I've only gotten mockery out of them. What would Messiah do? And they don't take it seriously. How come you don't take it seriously? Is it literally impossible for you to do that? I thought his commandments aren't grievous, and impossible. Why can't you do that? What do you mean you can't be like him? You're saying that the Father can't do something in you? Can't overcome something in you? Aren't you lying? Yes, yes, they are lying. Whether knowingly or unknowingly, they're still lying. It's the same result. So that's a massive division spiritually, man, to believe in the true Messiah versus the Trinity and incarnation, and they deny all the everything that he did. It was a giant miracle. Um, it would be more so of a miracle than like a literal incarnation, which doesn't really have much of a spiritual meaning. That's why he overcame sin, because he was from the seed of God, whatever that means. I don't know of any scripture that talks about physical seed. I know of scriptures that talk about spiritual seed. Cain and Abel were both from Adam and Eve, right? And one of them sinned and did evil, and one of them he did righteous. He was doing what was right, and they were both from Adam and Eve. And there's people out there that actually teach a physical devil seed doctrine, physical. It's nonsense. They were both from Adam and Eve, and this is the reality we live in. Your own enemies could be from your own family. That's all. And it probably is for most people, because I don't think it's very often today the whole entire family and everyone is on the same side spiritually. Chances are you're plucked out. Maybe one or two from the families. That's what I know. That's how I don't know anyone. Uncle in the Far East teaches lies. It's unfortunate. I tried to tell him, but can you imagine somebody that, especially a few years ago, I was even younger, telling somebody who's been preaching a long time that rebuked by a stupid young kid, So the only thing they can do is, you got it off the internet. Oh, okay. All right. That's how they shut you down. You just got it off the internet. as if his people just believe everything they read, just automatically. Oh, he wrote it down, I believe it. Yeah, they wouldn't have a clue. They wouldn't have a clue what it, None of the saints do that. They just read and suddenly believe. It's a constant searching for truth until it's confirmed, And sometimes you're going to be wrong, and you got to change your mind. It's part of learning the truth. You're going to be wrong sometimes. No big deal. Just turn around, admit it to yourself, mostly, because yourself is sort of the worst enemy. Because of pride, you can't admit you're wrong on something. And then that's it. No big deal. But it becomes a big deal if you can't admit that all the scripture is leaning towards this truth, and somebody else maybe proved it, and you don't have anything to give them back. You just say you got it off the internet. No, show me the scriptures. Go line by line, precept upon precept, on why I'm wrong. Show me so I could even correct myself if I'm wrong. No, it didn't happen. It didn't happen. Just, you got it off the internet. That's it. Oh, that's how you disprove everything I said? One of them was the Father created evil. Nope. Right to my face. Nope. And I'm just like smiling. I'm like, man, I know that, I know it says that openly, plainly. Show me then. So, okay, I'll show you. I opened it up and read it. I create light. I create darkness. I create good. I might not nail it. And I create evil. I do all these things, because I believe in the Father created light and darkness for a purpose, separated them for a purpose. There's nothing. Night has nothing to do with darkness. I mean, light has nothing to do with darkness. And he still went to my disbelief, because that was a few years back, and I didn't know that people were so resistant back then towards truth. I read it to him. I'm like, show me where it says the opposite now. Come on, show me. Nope. Satan created evil. Nope. I feel like could have been real Bible study, and it all just ended up being nothing, just nothingness. I didn't get rebuked properly if I was wrong, and I was shut down because I just read it off the internet, you know. For anybody in the truth, you know, people who say that's not a mark of somebody who's even remotely wise. You don't just shut someone down right away and just say you got it off the internet. So what if, let's say you did. Now prove it wrong, you know, prove all things, prove it wrong that you didn't happen. We are to learn as little children. They keep forgetting that. Yeah, and I've been wrong about a few things, and I'm okay with that. I don't like, no one likes it. I don't like it at first, you know. But if you can't get over that hump of not liking you're wrong, then it's over. You won't learn anymore. He won't allow it. I don't think he allows it. You're basically forced in a way to admit that you were deceived about something. And, you know, in the beginning, I would have been deceived about virtually everything because that's where I came out of the church system, and they taught me what they call truth, but I found out right away most of it's not truth, you know. And it was kind of strange the way it happened, because when I, you know, when I actually had the real faith, just believed one day, and I believed the first thing what came to my mind is I want to know the truth. That's all. I just want to know the truth. He like got me to put that all aside, whatever you've heard in there, put it all aside and start from the bottom, and you read and you learn. So I had to, and I, you know, it's going on every day since then. It never stops. One of the more minor things, I think, you know, that I don't really see, and I don't know for sure, is what on earth, for example, um, I'm not trying to make it, because you know, there's greater commandments and there's some that are lesser. What on earth is a fringe? You know, if somebody knows, maybe that would be helpful, and I can move on from what on earth that is. Because some say it's a bunch of Babylonian strings, and some say it's just a ribbon. It's just the edge folded over, stitched with a ribbon over it, which seems to make more sense, but I still don't know for sure. So, you know, that's pretty much the process of what I'm reading in the scriptures. You just constantly keep asking questions and learning, even the smaller things. Because if you ignore the small things, then you automatically, I think, spiritually ignore the bigger things. And he's not going to be found a liar. If you're not faithful with a little, you're also not faithful with much. Done, over. So what I found out is they also don't care about a bunch of smaller things. They just say, he died for us and we just believe in Messiah and it's over. And I'm like, oh, I guess there's nothing to talk about. There's nothing to learn. You know, and the Spirit just won't let me to, he won't let me to accept that. When they say that, you know, I can't accept it. They don't want to talk about anything, you know, and I can't, even my own family, you know, I live by myself here, but sometimes, you know, I try to bring up something we could maybe read from the scriptures and bounce, you know, words back and forth, and it never works. Every time I say something, it's foul. Because I give my genuine, honest understanding, and right away they don't like that understanding. So what I found out they do, in general, is they have a few verses they like, and they pick out and raise above all the others, and they say, read that over and over again. It's all about this. It's all about that. It's a sneaky way of sort of getting around the problem. It's not that what they say isn't important, like Matthew 6, 7, and 8, or 5, 6, and 7, really important verses, and I agree. And it's all about that, and but what about what I read in Colossians? What about what I read in somewhere else? How come you're saying you can't do that when it says I should be doing that? No answers. No answers. I've seen what happens to people like you. They have no peace in their life, and they're divided and angry all the time, and they're constantly judging people. That's been my experience. It's been really disappointing because those are false accusations about no peace and all that stuff. Um, you know, um, I can make the claim, and I usually don't like bringing it up to anybody, but if I didn't have peace, then I wouldn't be able to live all by myself for years. Um, you know, Single. Yeah, I sleep well at night, and it's because I trust in Him for my peace and understanding. But they slander, they slander and say that you're angry, judgmental, and have no peace. Say a bunch of hurtful things, um, and then we can't get anywhere. So I don't know at what point sometimes to give up. I don't want to give up on somebody, but it seems like you almost have to kind of walk away as far as trying to bring truth out. Because it does mention admonish something once or twice, but if they don't accept it after like 2 or 3 times, then you're just going against a brick wall, I guess. One of more recently, we brought this up in videos that I have on private now. Live by every word, but I understand that better than 1 year ago. So what I found out is if you bring that up, that really starts stirring the pot up too. Doesn't your Messiah say to live by every word, and directly say you shall not live by bread alone? And then you tell him that he is the bread from heaven. He's that spiritual food, and he's saying don't live by that alone. And everyone's doing it. Everyone is doing that. Exactly what he said not to do. And you could see in their expressions, like, man, those were true words, and no one ever told me it. But then they resist it. Then they come up with excuses. Yeah. And I think you've put in some of your comments somewhere, with much wisdom or something comes with, it's not all, it comes with extra sorrow too. There's like a negative, but it's not a horrible negative. It just is what it is. People might think wrongly and say, now you're nothing but sorrow and negativity because you have a little bit of wisdom now. No, that's not true either. You just have to have the right the right balance of truth. It's a fine line between truth and error. His word divides between soul and spirit. So it cuts right between that bone and marrow, which is a fine line. And they break that. They break that fine line, and they mix it all up. And I think they're scared. Most people are scared that their world is going to collapse. If, they could see where that's heading. I can't do what you're doing and learn what you're learning. My whole world's going to collapse. Yeah, it will. You're going to lose your soul, according to the scriptures. You're going to lose your soul, destroy it, because it needs to be. It's no good. It's the old man. It's carnal. It's dead. And they don't, I think, I've said this before in other videos, I think most people, when they come to belief, they join, become the members, they get baptized, they have some kind of sense on what they're supposed to do. And I think they know at least a little bit, and then they don't see anyone else really maybe doing it, and they choose the wide way, the easy way, and then it goes downhill from there, I think. Because you can't read all those verses about, the gospel accounts, all his words, and not have like any understanding on what that means. He's like basically saying, give up the world, in short, give up the world. So I think they know, but they didn't actually think anyone was doing that. So then when you come across someone that is, then they're offended. They're offended that someone's actually wanting to do these things. Just like the Pharisees were offended, the disciples were offended. The disciples were offended before they received the Spirit. They were hanging in there. He chose them, but they were, some of those words were hard to hear, and they couldn't hear them. And if you catch those little things in there, when he asked them, do you now understand? And they say yes, you're supposed to catch that. They didn't actually understand it. Most people don't catch it. They never learn those little things. He's actually kind of, as a shepherd, as a guide, he understands that they don't fully understand, but they say yes anyways. Yes, I understand. No, you don't. No, you don't. Not yet. It's like a job or something. They ask you something complicated, and does everyone understand? And everyone says yes, because they don't want to be in shame for saying no. So the disciples were like that in the beginning too. They didn't fully understand all these things. But yeah, I think that's all I got. And if anyone knows what on earth a fringe is, I think it's just a blue ribbon. That's what this is right here. It's just a blue ribbon stitched over. Could be wrong. I don't know. And they love not their life unto death. Yeah, I think that's in Revelation, or at least that's one of the places that they don't love their soul, their life, to the death. And no one can understand that until they actually start dying to who and what they are. Then you can understand that. They don't see the flip side, though. It's not all bad. Destroying your soul, just getting out of this world, Babylon. That's when the blessings start coming in. So they don't see the flip side of it. They just see the scary negative side. That's all. They see a desert and it's dry and there's no food, and we want to go back to Egypt where there's people and there's lots of food, and we'll be in slavery, but at least we're comfortable and everyone will like us, and we have a lot of food and all this stuff. So they don't see the flip side, many of them. It's when you actually start doing his will, then you get more understanding, and then you get his Spirit. And if you had a little bit in there, just keeping you in line just enough to not fall away, now you're being filled up when you start doing these things. And the more you do, the more I believe that happens. So it's very important to try to, whatever you understand, try to keep it from now on. If you know to do something, then just do it. Whatever it is. And it takes practice. And then you, I don't know how to explain, even when you're down and out or something, bad day, it's different than having a bad day before you believed anything. It's different. You could be wasted, as far as just drained, not doing good, horrible day, but you didn't fall, you know what I mean? You didn't fall to some kind of There's a verse on that. The world's sorrow is like death, but godly sorrow or fatherly sorrow is repentance. So there's two kinds of sorrows. There's one that's leads to good, even if it hurts a little bit, and then there's the other that's worthless. It doesn't get you anywhere except death. And all these verses start to mean something more and more. They become alive. The living. They're not just letters on a page anymore. So for us, the Bible, the scriptures they're important, and I think most people would, it's important to them, but you can't worship the book. And that's when people don't have the Spirit in them, they strive over like the smallest things in there. And if it's not perfect, like in their own mind, then their faith is gone. It like vanishes. If there's not a translation that's literally perfect, every single word, my faith is destroyed. Things like that, small little things. But so that's I don't know what, I think most people would agree with that. I think something about the Spirit keeps you from going too far from the King James Version for some reason. For some reason, you just don't go too far from that. And I don't like all the other ones, but I don't have a huge problem with the New King James, but that's about it though. I won't go any further because of what I know. It just bothers me. It bothers me that I believe that was all done for the sake of causing confusion and perversion and asking questions like, did he really say, Father, forgive them? They know not what they do, because that's not in the two oldest manuscripts, the bestest, oldest manuscripts. It's not in there. And then they put some of these words back because of how obvious they should be in there. But, if they made translations based on that 100%, they would be the most butchered, contradicting scriptures, Bible translations out there. That's how corrupt those two manuscripts are. So I don't think it's getting better. We're just left with whatever was already, what everyone else had. It was already fine the way it is. It was already good. It's just going to get worse and worse in the church systems, more loose, blending in with the world, all religions in. There's not really one way. There's not one proper way. It's all, that's where it's all going. It's already there, I guess. It's already there. It's just spreading out to a greater level, I think, those mega churches. Super popular, and I think they think that the Father doesn't care about some of these smaller things, like dressing in modesty and properly. And they do that, they look like gangsters, some of these people, with their, just the way they look like, and that's what they want to attract everyone, bikers, everything. They're supposed to be converted spiritually, not blending in the way they are. You're supposed to repent, but no, we accept you the way you are, no change necessary. And they twist his words so badly, some of these denominations, because I have the scriptures in my mind. I know I can't just recite it, but when someone brings it up, I know the proper words, and they're just butchering it left and right, what he said over and over again. And the people that seem more modest, they do the same thing though. They're just a little more sneaky about it. They the wolves you the wolves won't come out. Everything will look like normal sheep until they receive actual truth from somebody. Then the wolf comes out a little bit. And that's what I found out. And I think I'm going to end it here. I finally not as shaky as in the beginning. Too much caffeine today, so that's not going to happen hopefully again. In that kind of with that much. But I don't know, some of these things are, I think the spirit just has to tell you, you know, some of these maybe, if you want to call them gray areas. But my understanding is if anything becomes an addiction, then that's no good. That's gotta stop. Period. If it's an addiction, you know, you're relying on it, then it becomes like an idol. Spiritually, it's an idol, and you're relying on something that you don't need to rely on. And I'm going to end it here. I have to wait a few seconds so with this program, or else the last few words are going to be cut off. But peace, blessings. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, bless you too. Peace.